On October 14, 2019, at 4:17 a.m., a security guard at St. Augustine Memorial Hospital heard something that should have been impossible, a heartbeat coming from a wing that had been abandoned for 14 years. He swore the sound wasn't faint. It wasn't distant. It was rhythmic, steady, almost mechanical. Almost intentional. And when he leaned closer to the sealed metal door of Ward C, he heard a whisper layered beneath the heartbeat. "You shouldn't be here." Here's the part that never made sense. The entire wing had no power, no patients, no machines, and no record of anybody surviving what happened there in 2005. But this story, the one you're about to hear, uncovers what was really behind that sound. And the question that has haunted me ever since is, if nothing alive was inside that abandoned ward, whose heartbeat was it? We will not answer that now. You will only understand the truth in the final lines of Part 5, when everything finally clicks into place. Before we dive deep into this unbelievable true story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because you won't want to miss the ending of this story. And trust me, the twist in the final part will leave you speechless. It began on a night that was supposed to be just another quiet shift for me. My name is Daniel Mercer, and in 2019, I worked as a junior nurse at St. Augustine Memorial, a hospital most people in town avoided if they could. It wasn't because of bad service or rude staff. It was something else. Something older. Something layered onto the walls, the floors, the flickering lights. Something that made even the bravest ER doctors take the long way around the central atrium at night. Every hospital has its share of strange stories, shadows that move the wrong way, odd sounds in empty rooms, the occasional patient claiming to see someone standing at the foot of their bed. We laugh about it during day shift, pretend we're immune during evening shift, and then try not to think about it during the graveyard shift. But St. Augustine, it was different. The building felt alive at night. Like it was watching you back. I had been working there for a little over 7 months when everything changed. It was raining that night, the kind of heavy, cold rain that makes the entire city feel half asleep. The hospital was unusually quiet for a Monday, no trauma cases, no late-night emergencies. Just the steady hum of the vents and the occasional beep of a monitor. At around 3:40 a.m., I was doing routine rounds when I noticed something odd. The lights on the east corridor were dimmer than usual, casting long stretches of shadows that seemed to shiver with every flicker. I brushed it off. Old wiring, I thought. The hospital was built in the 1950s, things like this happened all the time. But then I heard it. A faint thump. Slow. Rhythmic. Like a heartbeat echoing through the walls. At first, I thought it was coming from a patient room. Maybe a loose monitor wire or a malfunctioning machine. But as I moved down the hallway, I realized something unsettling. The sound was getting louder. But there were no occupied rooms in that direction. The east corridor led to Ward C, a place none of us were allowed to enter. The doors were sealed. The windows were covered. The hospital claimed it was structurally unsafe, but the older staff always exchanged strange looks whenever that reasoning came up. A few would even tell the newer employees, "Don't go near Ward C. If you hear something there, you didn't." The heartbeat was coming from behind that door. I stood there, frozen for a full 10 seconds, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. The rain outside was hammering the windows, maybe it was just the building vibrating. But no, the sound was too precise, too deliberate. Thump. 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 I placed my ear against the cold metal door. And that's when I heard the whisper. "You shouldn't be here." I staggered back, heart pounding in my ears, my breath caught in my throat. It felt like every instinct in my body screamed at once, "Walk away." But curiosity has always been my biggest flaw. So instead of leaving, I knocked. I don't know why. It was pure reflex, like knocking on a door in your own home when it's slightly ajar. The metal vibrated under my knuckles, and for a moment, the entire hallway seemed to hold its breath. No response. I was about to turn around when something changed. The heartbeat, that slow, steady rhythm, suddenly sped up. Not wildly, not erratically. Just unnaturally, like it recognized something, or someone. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. And then it stopped completely. The silence that followed was heavier than the sound itself. I don't know how to describe it, but it was the kind of silence that makes you feel watched, the kind that makes your bones feel cold from the inside. I took a step back. Then another. Daniel? The voice came from behind me, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was Marcus, one of the senior nurses. He looked half asleep, holding a cup of vending machine coffee and squinting down the hallway. "What are you doing here?" he asked. There was a sound, I said, feeling ridiculous as soon as the words left my mouth. Like a heartbeat. And a whisper. "I think someone might be." Marcus cut me off with a sharp glare. "Don't repeat that. Ever." He grabbed my arm, pulled me away from the door, and didn't relax until we'd turned a corner. "Look," he said, rubbing his forehead. "You're new. You don't know how things work around here. But Ward C is off limits. If you hear something, if you see something, you walk away. You don't ask questions." "But why? What happened here?" He hesitated for a long moment. Then, "Because the last time someone opened that door, they didn't come out the same." His voice cracked on the last word. Marcus wasn't an emotional guy. Seeing him like that sent a chill through me deeper than anything I'd heard behind the door. Before I could ask more, all the lights in the corridor flickered, once, twice, then stabilized. But something was different. The heartbeat was gone. The whisper was gone. And yet, I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever was inside that ward had finally noticed me. Later that night, long after Marcus had gone back to his rounds, I walked past the east corridor again. I didn't go near the door. I didn't stop. I didn't listen. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw something that made my blood turn to ice. The sealed door of Ward C. The one that hadn't been opened in 14 years. Was now slightly open. Just an inch. But enough for darkness to spill into the hallway like a silent, waiting breath. I knew then, something inside was awake. And it wanted out. The next evening, I walked into the hospital with a tightening weight in my chest, the kind that makes your lungs feel smaller and your heartbeat louder than it should be. I tried convincing myself I'd imagined the small gap in Ward C's door. Maybe the shadows had played tricks on me. Maybe exhaustion had twisted what I saw. But when you witness something that defies logic, your brain tries to soften the edges, tries to blur out the impossible so you can function normally again. I held on to that fragile denial as tightly as I could. The hospital smelled different that night. Normally, St. Augustine reeked of disinfectant, old linoleum, and a lingering sterility that clung to your clothes long after you left. But when I stepped into the lobby, the air was thicker, humid almost, as if the vents had stopped circulating properly. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder than usual, their humming vibrating faintly under my feet. A strange heaviness hung over every corner of the building, like the walls were trying to hold in a secret. My shift began quietly. Blood pressure checks, chart updates, a few restless patients asking for pain meds. I took comfort in the routine, trying to drown out the memory of the heartbeat and the whisper. But the unease followed me everywhere. I could feel it like a pressure behind my eyes, like someone standing too close behind me even when the hallway was empty. By 2:50 a.m., most of the floor had settled into that eerie, half-silent lull that hospitals adopt in the early morning hours. I was organizing supplies when Marcus approached. He looked worse than the night before, darker circles under his eyes, skin pale, shoulders tense. He kept glancing down the hallway as if expecting something to crawl out. "Stick to the west wing tonight," he said quietly. "No rounds on the east side." "Is this about Ward C again?" I whispered. He didn't deny it. He just sighed, the sound heavy and defeated. "Things happen around that place," he said. "If you value your sanity, you stay away." "But you never told me what happened there," I said. "That's because the story is not mine to tell," he muttered. "And because knowing doesn't help anyone." His words unsettled me more than if he'd told me outright that it was haunted or cursed or filled with something unnatural. At least then I'd know the shape of what I was dealing with. Instead, he offered silence in the shape of a warning. Silence always hides the worst. Around 3:15 a.m., the intercom crackled with static, then went dead. That wasn't unusual, the system was old. But when it flickered back on, a faint noise leaked through, a muffled pulse, steady and slow, echoing across every speaker. Thump. 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 My stomach twisted. The same sound I'd heard through the metal door the night before. I looked at Marcus. His face drained of color. "Stay here," he said sharply. But before I could protest, the lights above us flickered violently, like someone was shaking the entire electrical grid. A cold gust of air rushed down the hallway, so sudden and sharp that papers flew off the counter beside me. I wrapped my arms around myself, shivering as goosebumps crawled up my skin. Then the intercom cut out again, and a suffocating silence settled over everything. Minutes passed. Or maybe seconds. Time felt distorted, stretched thin like an elastic band about to snap. I couldn't stay still. Whether from fear or curiosity or foolishness, I don't know. But my feet started moving on their own, carrying me toward the east corridor, the place Marcus told me to avoid. I tried rationalizing it. Maybe a pipe burst, maybe a monitor was malfunctioning. But deep down, I knew I wasn't going there for technical reasons. I was going because something had called me there. As I approached the east wing, the temperature dropped steadily. My breath started to fog in front of me. The air smelled stale, metallic, like wet iron and cold dust. The corridor lights flickered in an unsettling pattern, 3 short flashes, a long pause, then another 3. It felt deliberate, almost like Morse code, though I didn't know what message it carried. The hallway was empty, but I felt watched. Not by eyes exactly, but by something deeper. Something that pressed against the edges of reality like it was testing the boundaries of the world around it. When I turned the final corner, my heart stopped. Ward C's door. The sealed, locked, untouched door was now open wider than before. The gap was nearly a foot. Blackness seeped out like a living shadow. There were no footsteps leading up to it. No signs of forced entry. Nothing disturbed except the door itself. I stood frozen, my mind racing. Every horror story I'd ever heard, every warning Marcus gave me, every instinct screaming in my skull, they all erupted at once. But then I heard something from inside. A whisper. Not like before. This one was clearer, closer, as if the voice was speaking right next to my ear. "Daniel, help me." My blood ran cold. How did it know my name? Against every ounce of common sense, I stepped closer. The darkness inside the ward wasn't natural. It felt thick, layered, like stepping into it would be the same as submerging myself underwater. But curiosity dragged me forward. And something else, something I didn't want to admit. A strange pull. A sense that whatever was inside, knew me. I leaned forward, peering into the black void. "Hello?" I whispered. No answer. Just a low hum, almost like a machine powering up after years of silence. Then a faint glimmer, like a distant light shifting deep within the darkness. I squinted, trying to make out what it was. A flicker? A reflection? Something moving? Suddenly, a hand clamped onto my shoulder, yanking me backward so hard I stumbled. Marcus. His eyes were wide with terror. "Are you insane?" he hissed. "Don't listen to it." "It said my name," I whispered. "How does it know my?" He shook his head violently. "It doesn't know you. It remembers you." He paused, swallowing hard before adding, "It remembers all of us." Before I could ask what he meant, something inside the ward scraped along the floor. A long, dragging sound, like something crawling or pulling itself toward the door. The darkness shifted. A shape began to emerge, not clearly, not fully, but enough to make my skin crawl. Marcus grabbed my wrist and pulled me away. "Move," he whispered. "Now." We backed away slowly, never turning our backs on the door. When we reached the end of the hallway, a soft but unmistakable sound echoed behind us. A heartbeat. Slow. Measured. And somehow, closer than before. Marcus whispered in a trembling voice, "This is how it starts." And before I could respond, every light in Ward C's hallway flickered off at once. We were plunged into darkness. And something in that darkness exhaled. The power came back only 3 seconds later, but to me it felt like an hour trapped in a breathless void. When the lights finally flickered on, the hallway looked exactly the same as before: sterile tiles, pale walls, empty stretch of corridor. Nothing seemed out of place. But the air had changed. It felt warmer now, almost humid, as if whatever had exhaled in the darkness had spread itself throughout the hall. As if it had seeped into the space between each breath we took. Marcus didn't speak for a long moment. His face looked drained, eyes unfocused. Finally, with a trembling voice, he whispered, "We shouldn't have been here. You shouldn't have listened. You shouldn't have responded." His hands were still on my arm, gripping tight enough to leave marks. "But what was that?" I asked quietly. "That sound, that voice, that heartbeat, what is in there?" He shook his head, jaw tight, eyes narrowing as if fighting memories he didn't want surfacing. "Not here," he said. "Not in this hallway. Come on." He dragged me back toward the west wing, each of his steps fast and tense, as if he expected something to appear behind us at any second. When we reached the nurse's station, he finally let go of my arm. I rubbed the tender skin, still feeling the ghost of his touch, but what bothered me more was the lingering sensation that something else had touched me in that hallway. Something invisible. Something cold. The rest of the shift passed in a haze. I couldn't focus. Every sound startled me. Every hallway looked darker than usual. Every corner seemed to hide a shadow that wasn't there before. I couldn't shake the feeling that something from Ward C had noticed me when I got too close. Or worse, followed me when Marcus dragged me away. By the time my shift ended at 7 a.m., I felt like I had aged years in one night. Outside, the rain had stopped, replaced by a dense fog curling around the hospital parking lot. The world felt eerily muted, like sound had been swallowed by the mist. As I walked to my car, a strange tingling sensation crawled up the back of my neck. I turned around, half expecting someone to be watching me from the entrance. No one was there. But the fog looked thicker near the east side of the building, swirling unnaturally. Almost pulsing. I got into my car quickly and drove home faster than usual. My apartment was a 20-minute drive from the hospital, a small place on the 3rd floor, quiet, with a view of a parking lot and a row of old trees. Normally it was comforting, a safe space to escape the hospital's constant noise. But that morning, something felt off the moment I walked inside. The air was still. Too still. I set down my keys and noticed something odd. My living room window, always closed, was slightly cracked open. Just an inch. The same inch that Ward C's door had been opened before everything escalated. A chill sliced through my spine. I closed it tightly and locked it. The first hour at home was normal enough. I showered, ate something quick, browsed my phone, trying to distract myself. But I couldn't ignore the feeling that something was wrong. Like the silence in my apartment wasn't truly silent. Like it was filled with an invisible static, a subtle pressure that made my ears ring faintly. I tried sleeping around 9 a.m. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to steady my breathing. At some point, I drifted into an uneasy half-dream, the kind where you feel both asleep and awake at the same time. I heard something faint in that liminal space between consciousness and dreams. A heartbeat. Soft. Slow. Thump, thump, thump. I opened my eyes instantly. My room was empty. The air was heavy, pressing down on my chest like a weight. I sat up slowly, listening. At first, nothing. Then something subtle, like fabric shifting. Like someone standing in the corner, moving just slightly. My eyes darted around the room. Nothing. I forced myself to breathe, to calm down, but the dread only grew. When I finally stood and stepped into the hallway, I froze. The apartment felt wrong. Colder. Quieter. Heavier. I walked toward the living room, each step slow and careful. The closer I got, the more my chest tightened, as if the air itself resisted my movement. When I turned the corner, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. My living room window was open again. Not a crack this time. Fully open. I had locked it. I was certain. I stepped closer, heart pounding in my ears. A cold breeze rushed in, carrying a metallic scent, the same one from Ward C, wet iron. Old dust. Abandoned rooms and forgotten stories. Then I heard it. A whisper. So faint I almost convinced myself it wasn't real. Daniel. My blood froze. The voice was behind me. I spun around. No one. But the smell grew stronger. The air heavier. My entire apartment felt like it had shifted by a fraction of a degree, like reality had bent and hadn't snapped back into place. My phone buzzed suddenly, startling me. It was Marcus. The message only said, "Do not go near any reflective surfaces. Call me when you can." I stared at the text, confused and terrified. Reflective surfaces? Mirrors? Windows? I glanced back at the large living room window, open and still. Then I saw something across the glass. My reflection. But it wasn't standing like me. It was slightly tilted. Head angled. Like it was listening to something behind the glass. Something just out of sight. I stepped back slowly, pulse racing. My reflection smiled. I did not. I stumbled away, knocking a lamp over as I reached the hallway. My hands shook uncontrollably as I dialed Marcus's number. He answered instantly, voice strained. "Listen to me," he said. "Did something follow you?" I don't know," I whispered. "Something's happening in my apartment. The window, the reflection, Marcus, what is this?" He took a deep breath. "It's what happens when Ward C wakes up. It attaches itself to whoever gets too close." "What does it want?" I asked. Silence. Long. Heavy. Then Marcus replied, voice barely above a whisper. "It wants to be remembered." Before I could respond, a soft knock echoed through my apartment. Once. Twice. 3 times. Slow. Deliberate. Right on my bedroom door. I was alone. But something else wasn't. I lowered the phone slowly, heart throttling my ribs, breath trembling. The knocking stopped abruptly, replaced by that same steady heartbeat. Thump. 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 It was right behind the door. And then a whisper seeped through the wood, soft and desperate. "Let me in." I stood frozen in my hallway, staring at the thin wooden barrier separating me from whatever had followed me home. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I didn't dare move. Then the door handle slowly, silently turned on its own. And whatever was inside my room began to push it open. The door opened no more than 2 inches, but that was enough for me to see the darkness inside shift like it had weight, like something in that room breathed differently from the rest of the apartment. The tiny crack felt like a wound torn open between 2 realities, and the air that seeped through it was unnaturally cold, not the kind of cold you feel on your skin, but the kind that sinks straight into your bones. The hallway around me felt thinner somehow, like the walls were pressing closer, trying to force me toward the door. My chest tightened painfully, and for a moment I genuinely believed the atmosphere was pushing me, nudging me, urging me to step forward. The handle twitched again, and the crack widened by another fraction of an inch. I stopped breathing. A faint sound drifted from inside the darkness, soft, slow, rhythmic. Thump. 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 But this time, the heartbeat wasn't echoing from somewhere distant. It was close. Too close. As if the source of the sound was standing right behind the door, leaning its head against it, listening to me breathe on the other side. My phone slipped from my hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. That single sound seemed to break whatever spell held the moment frozen. The heartbeat stopped. The air grew tighter, heavier. And then a whisper threaded its way through the crack. "Daniel. I'm cold." My legs almost gave out. The voice wasn't distorted like before. It didn't echo or scratch or vibrate. It sounded human. Familiar. Personal. I tried to step back, but my body refused to move. Then a hand, pale, thin, impossibly long, reached through the narrow gap and pressed against the wood. Not quite pushing, not quite knocking. Just resting there, like it was waiting for me to come closer. I staggered backward, inhaling sharply. The hand retreated slowly into the darkness of my room, and the door stood still again, half opened, half breathing. My instincts screamed to run, out of the apartment, out of the building, anywhere but here. But some part of me, some awful, curious part, stayed rooted, trembling and listening. My phone buzzed on the floor. I scrambled for it, hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it again. It was Marcus calling. I answered immediately, whispering, "It's in my room. It's right behind the door." Marcus inhaled sharply on the other end. "Listen to me, Daniel. Whatever you do, do not open that door." "I didn't open it," I whispered harshly. "It opened on its own." "That's worse," he said softly. "Much worse." "What is it?" I whispered. "What followed me? Why is it here?" His silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. Then he spoke. "The thing in Ward C, it doesn't just haunt the hospital. It attaches to people who acknowledge it. People who hear it. People who answer it. And once it knows your name, it becomes harder to get rid of." "But what does it want with me?" I asked. "It wants the same thing it always wanted," Marcus said. "To finish what started in 2005. I frowned, fear sharpening into confusion. "But I wasn't even there in 2005. "You weren't," he said slowly. "But someone connected to you was." Before I could ask what he meant, a sudden scraping sound came from inside my bedroom. Something dragged itself across the floor, inch by inch, toward the door. The rhythm of the sound was wrong, uneven, broken, like limbs moving at angles they weren't designed to. I backed away, pressing myself against the opposite wall. Marcus's voice lowered to a desperate whisper. "Daniel, listen. Ward C wasn't closed because of structural issues. It was closed because of one patient." "A patient?" I echoed, trembling. "A girl," Marcus continued. "Her name was Emily. 12 years old. She was admitted after claiming she heard voices. Saw things. Felt something watching her from corners no one else could see. Her doctors thought it was psychosis, until the night the entire ward heard it too." My stomach clenched. The heartbeat in my bedroom door echoed faintly again. "What happened to her?" I whispered. Marcus paused. "They found her standing in a corner of her room. Perfectly still. Eyes open. Not blinking. Her heartbeat had synchronized with something else. Something they couldn't explain. And when they tried to move her, she whispered a name. The air in my living room grew impossibly still. She whispered the name Daniel. A cold shock raced down my spine. "That's impossible," I breathed. "How? Why would she?" Then something thumped against the door behind me. Not a gentle push. A hard, deliberate impact. The entire door frame rattled. Marcus's voice cracked. "It's remembering you. It always remembers the names spoken during the final night." "I wasn't there," I whispered. "I wasn't even in this town." "Sometimes the thing in Ward C doesn't follow bloodlines," Marcus said slowly. "Sometimes it follows attention. If you saw something connected to the case, read something about it, heard a story about it, you gave it a path. I tried to process his words, but the thing inside the room slammed against the door again, harder this time. The hinges groaned loudly. The old wooden frame vibrated. My breath hitched. It's trying to get out. It won't stop unless you break the connection, Marcus said urgently. You need to leave the apartment. Now. I turned toward the front door, only to freeze in terror. Standing in front of it was my reflection. Not in a mirror. Not in the glass. But physically standing there, facing me, its head twisted slightly to one side, like it had been listening through the walls. Its skin was too pale. Its arms too long. Its eyes were dark hollows, no reflection inside them. Its mouth was slightly open, as if about to mimic my breathing. I choked on my own breath. The copy of me took one slow step forward, its movements wrong, stiff in places, too fluid in others. Like a puppet pulled by strings that didn't understand anatomy. Marcus, I whispered. What? What is it? He asked. My reflection, it's not in the glass anymore. Silence. Then Marcus said the words I will never forget. Don't let it touch you. The creature tilted its head further, the sound of its neck cracking echoing painfully through the apartment. It opened its mouth wider, as if trying to speak, but only a low, screeching inhale came out. Then it began walking toward me, slow and jerky. Behind me, my bedroom door slammed so hard it echoed like a gunshot. Something inside had thrown its entire weight at it. I was trapped between the door and the imitation of myself. The hallway narrowed. The air thinned. Reality felt stretched and warped, bending like heated glass. The thing that looked like me reached out a hand. I stumbled backward, heart pounding so violently I felt faint. The heartbeat coming from the bedroom synced with my pulse. Thump thump. Thump thump. Thump thump. My reflection's smile widened until it was a grotesque tear across its face. It whispered one word in a voice that was mine but wrong in every way. Remember. And then it lunged. The creature lunged at me with a force that shattered the illusion of hesitation. It moved like a blur of broken anatomy, arms stretching unnaturally wide, fingers splayed like sharpened branches reaching for my throat. I barely had time to stumble sideways before its hand slammed into the wall where my face had been a second earlier, leaving a deep print in the plaster, as if its touch alone carried a weight greater than any living thing. I crashed into the floor, gasping, scrambling backward across the hardwood as my reflection, no, the thing wearing my reflection, twisted toward me in an awful contortion of joints and angles. Its head snapped to the side with a wet crack, and then it began crawling toward me, its limbs bending backward like a spider folding itself through a too small space. From the other side of the hallway, the bedroom door shook violently again. Something inside the room was slamming against it repeatedly, each impact echoing through my bones. I was trapped. One horror crawling toward me from the front, another battering down the door behind me. My breath came in short, panicked bursts. My hands shook uncontrollably. Daniel. Marcus shouted through the phone on speaker. What's happening? Talk to me. It's coming at me. I gasped. Which one? He demanded. A terrifying question I didn't want to answer. The reflection, I stammered. It's not a reflection anymore. Marcus made a sound like a strangled curse. It's manifesting. It's using your shape. Do not let it touch. Before he could finish, the bedroom door behind me cracked violently, splitting down the center. A pale, skeletal hand shoved through the broken wood and clawed at the air. The room exhaled again, cold and thick, as if something inside was patiently working its way through reality. The reflection creature crawled closer. I scrambled to my feet, slipping twice before I found my balance. I grabbed the nearest object, a table lamp, and swung it wildly just as the creature lunged again. The metal base connected with its face, caving in part of the cheek. But instead of falling, it jerked back with an expression that shouldn't exist on a human face, a mixture of amusement and hunger. Its jaw stretched wider, splitting the skin, revealing a pitch-black hollow where teeth should have been. Then it spoke again. "Remember." The lamp slipped from my hand. I turned and sprinted for the kitchen, the creature smashing into the wall behind me. My apartment suddenly felt crooked, like the geometry of the rooms had shifted when I wasn't looking. Corners felt sharper, hallways longer, shadows thicker. I ran anyway, adrenaline forcing my legs to move faster than my thoughts. Something was coming through the bedroom door now. I heard wood collapsing under immense pressure. A low, rattling breath escaped into the hallway, followed by a dragging sound, slow, steady, rhythmic. Thump. Drag. Thump. Drag. Footsteps, mixed with a heartbeat. I burst into the kitchen, slamming the door shut behind me. The flimsy wood and cheap lock wouldn't last long, but it was a barrier, thin, temporary, but a barrier. I braced myself against the counter, trying to catch my breath. My hands shook so violently I could barely stand. "Marcus," I whispered into the phone, "I'm trapped. There are 2 of them." I heard Marcus breathing heavily, like he was running. "I'm coming," he said. "You should have told me, it's stronger than I thought." "What is it?" I demanded, choking on fear and exhaustion. "Why me? Why my name? Why now?" Marcus swallowed hard. "Because you asked about it. You heard it. And you answered it. That's all it needs." "That's not enough," I snapped. "What does it want?" There was a long pause. Then he said something I still wish had been a lie. "It wants the moment it lost. The moment it never finished." Before I could process that, the kitchen door handle twisted sharply. I stumbled back. The creature outside scraped its nails slowly down the wood, dragging deliberately, letting the sound sink into me. "Marcus," I whispered shakily, "it's here." "Don't open the door," he said. "It's not me opening it," I replied. The door thudded once, softly, almost politely. Then again, harder. The wood trembled. A deep crack ran down its center. I backed into the corner of the kitchen, heart slamming in my chest. The lights flickered. A cold breeze seeped through the cracks in the door. The reflection creature whispered through the wood, voice distorted. "Remember what you promised her." "I didn't promise anything," I yelled. But somewhere deep inside, a memory flickered. A memory I didn't recognize, but felt like it belonged to me. A hospital room. A faint voice. A little girl whispering something I could barely hear. Marcus's voice snapped me back. "Daniel, listen to me very carefully. What you saw in Ward C, that heartbeat, it wasn't a machine. It was hers." "Emily's?" I asked. "Yes," he whispered. "Her body died, but the heartbeat never stopped." My eyes widened in horror. "That's impossible." "Ward C wasn't abandoned because of danger," Marcus said. "It was abandoned because they couldn't shut her down. Her heart kept going, echoing through the walls. And anyone who heard it long enough, started hearing other things too." "But what does she want from me?" I screamed. "Do you remember your first week at the hospital?" Marcus asked urgently. "When you found that old patient file lying on the desk?" I nodded slowly, memory returning. I had flipped through it absent-mindedly, reading the notes of a girl who complained of shadows watching her. "That was her file, Daniel," Marcus said. "You read the last thing she said before she died." I froze. Because I remembered that last line clearly. I hadn't understood it then. It seemed random, strange, out of context. The final note in her file had said, "He promised he wouldn't leave me." I had laughed at the oddness. I had whispered, "Who?" under my breath. And the note on the next page, the doctor's comment, had said, "No one knows who this Daniel is." My blood ran cold. The heartbeat grew louder outside the kitchen door. The creature on the other side pressed its face against the wood, making it bulge inward. A horrible, wet whisper seeped through. "You left me. The door cracked. I stumbled backward, falling onto the tile floor. My vision blurred with panic. "Marcus," I whispered, "she thinks I left her, she thinks I'm the promise." "Because she never moved on," he said. Her mind got stuck in the moment of death. Repeating. Looping. Echoing. And she attached herself to the name she said last. The name Daniel. No blood tie. No history. Just a name spoken in terror. The kitchen door burst open. The reflection creature stepped in slowly, its body twitching with each unnatural movement. Behind it, a small shape emerged from the hallway shadows. A girl. Pale. Eyes open too wide. Neck bent slightly like she had been carried too quickly. Her heartbeat echoed through the entire apartment. Thump. 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 She reached out a trembling hand. "You said you wouldn't leave me." Tears blurred my eyes. "I'm not the Daniel you knew," I whispered. "I don't know you. But I'm here now." She blinked. Just once. And the reflection creature froze. The apartment lights dimmed. The air shifted. And then she whispered something so soft I almost missed it. "You remembered." The heartbeat slowed. The reflection creature collapsed like a puppet with cut strings, its body dissolving into a thin mist that vanished into the floorboards. Emily, or whatever remained of her, stepped closer. Her small cold hand touched mine, gentle, almost grateful. Then, with a faint, fragile smile, she vanished. The air lightened. The apartment warmed. The heartbeat stopped. Completely. For the first time since 2005. I collapsed onto the floor, sobbing in relief and exhaustion. Marcus arrived minutes later, bursting through the door. He found me shaking, pale, staring at the now quiet apartment. "It's over," he whispered. I nodded slowly. But deep down, I knew something chilling. That heartbeat had never belonged to something alive. And now that it was gone, the silence felt even worse. Because silence can hide more than sound. And sometimes, when the heartbeat stops, that's when the real horror begins. Subscribe for more chilling tales.